Hi, I'm J.John. Welcome to Facing the Canon, and I'm delighted today to talk with my friend Charlie Mackesy. How would you describe yourself, Charlie?
I paint. I paint pictures and sculpt, and sometimes speak in churches.
All right. Well, we'll unpack that in a few minutes. But let's go back. You were born in Northumberland.
I was born, yes, in a pub in Hexham, Corbridge, just outside in Northumberland. Yeah.
What did you do when you left school?
When I left school, I went to stay with a good friend of mine. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then he was killed quite quickly after I arrived. And it was on a farm in Gloucestershire, and then actually two friends of mine were killed, which sort of precipitated in me quite a reaction, and so I went on a sort of an alcoholic binge for a while, age 19.
How long did that binge last for?
Probably 7 or 8 months of confusion, and I think if your life has been reasonably ordinary and to have that kind of thing happen, I'm not really sure what I was looking for, but I certainly found comfort in dislocating from reality for a while. Yeah, so 6 months, a good 6 months.
Yeah. And then where did you find yourself?
I found myself in London for the first time, really, aged 19, and looking around, wondering what London was, and I think I was still, I think the alcohol was no longer working, but I was just interested in other things, and I was staying with a friend. I stayed on the floor. I didn't really know the guy. I remember waking up and finding a drawing pen on a side table and some paper. And it was a hot day, and I went outside and drew the street. And I then kept drawing the streets, and I'd say that for 4 years without stopping. Like Forrest Gump, just didn't stop running.
What, you just
kept drawing every day, with winter, with everything, most days, with a little Walkman on. And I, for some reason, on that first week or two of drawing, I asked the big questions, like, is there a God? What is consciousness? Well, I asked some very big questions that didn't really have any answers. But my drawing was a way of processing the big questions and trying to work out in my head, and making something of the questions into drawings. I don't really know what I was doing, actually, but...
Did you sell them?
That's how I lived. Passers-by bought them off me now and again. Just enough.
Just enough to keep you going?
Yeah, and I lived in a coal shed.
Did you? Literally?
I literally lived in a... Yeah, a friend of mine had a flat. He had a little coal shed, and we cleared it out, and I slept in there. And I began thinking for the first time about it. I hated religion. At least I didn't like institutional religion at all.
Yes.
I thought it was toxic and dangerous and controlling and hypocritical and all those things that most people seem to feel. That it wasn't. I couldn't trust it. That it was a veneer. It was like a club for nice people who weren't really who they were made out to be. So I was very hostile. But in the same breath, I had this sense that there had to be more, and I thought Jesus had something very special about him. And so I started talking to him really when I was drawing, and began this strange conversation with him. And bit by bit, he showed himself to me, I think, in a very, very gentle way. And 5 years on from that conversation, I dared to go into a church. So it took me a long time.
But would you say that was a moment of an epiphany?
It was an epiphany in droplets.
Yes.
You assume an epiphany is like a bucket
Yeah.
being dumped on someone's head. For me, it was more a gentle epiphany of drops.
But
You
then
know.
gradually through the years, you began to understand more,
And
or
more-
experience more.
More and more, and I think that if I even looking at the drawings, the drawings began in a very controlled way, architecturally very controlled, and then the more I understood of God, the looser and freer they became, and then they ended up very different. But it was a reflection of what was going on inside, I think. You know, the whole notion of freedom and grace and forgiveness, and you know, I went from drawing buildings, then I got involved in, I was fascinated by Black American gospel music culture, so I went to a lot of places where they did that.
Yes.
Because I thought I hadn't really, you know, they were expressing something that I connected with inside. And so I went and painted them. I went to Africa and New Orleans and brought the work back, and it was taken up by galleries, and they'd showed my work, and that's how it really began. But it was definitely begun with prayers. And I remember people who bought the drawings would read these little prayers I'd written. I found it very difficult to pray just sitting there. I usually think of sex or something I'd forgotten to do. And my head was just, you know, so I thought the only way to pray would be to write them down, because at least they exist.
Yes.
That is physically there. So I'd write. So on the side of drawings, I'd have the prayers. And so when people bought them, they'd say, "Why have you got this strange little thing here?" So that's how it began, and the work developed, and then I suppose my work's been in various phases, but I went through a whole thing of doing the prodigal. You have a prodigal hanging there, and that really began actually with the suspicion that I didn't really think I could be loved by God. I knew it was a truth, but I didn't think it was an experiential truth. I thought it was something that you like. You know, a lot of people I knew who are Christians didn't seem to really believe it.
Yes.
You know, they said, "Oh yes, yes, oh well, I'm forgiven," but actually, you know, it was sort of a rainbow they couldn't quite.
Yeah, they didn't quite feel the truth of it.
No, or felt that deep down the secrets of their lives were too dark. And if you only knew me, you know, God wouldn't. He might love you, J.John,
Yes.
because look at you. You know,
Yes.
but not me. And that was my experience, and a lot of people. So I just wanted to try and find physical ways of painting it. And I thought the hug is a real embrace. And I read that story and thought, man, it's that moment of complete acceptance. So that's how I started on all that. And then...
So how did that come about, though? So during those years, were you reading the Bible as well?
I did sort of read. I liked the New Testament, particularly the book of John.
Yes.
So I wasn't... and
so you were reading the parables and reading the stories.
yeah, and I thought what Jesus had to say was extraordinary. I really did, and I found some of it quite difficult, but I thought it was worth feeding on. And I remember on the tube trains, there were, I think it was the Bible, so there's someone who used to put up these big verses.
Yes.
And I used to love those, as you see on the tube, and there was just enough to feed on. You know,
Yeah.
I can't eat too much of the
Yes.
word.
Yes.
I like little strong drops.
And then just chew them and
Yeah, and I remember
like
there was
the cud.
yeah, you should. There was that amazing verse when I was struggling with Jamie's death, and it said, "Cast your burdens onto the Lord, and He will sustain you." You know, He'll sustain you. I remember reading that over and writing it down, thinking that's, you know, how does that work? What does casting your burdens onto Him really feel like? How does that sustain? You know, so that one verse is enough to last a long time.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I'm slow. I actually realise I'm very slow at understanding things, very slow at imbibing things. But if they get into me, they stay.
They stay.
Yeah.
So like the prodigal son, and
Yes.
but you've also done the prodigal daughter.
Well, funny, the daughter was my ex-girlfriend. is a fantastic person, and she struggled with severe depression. And I remember me talking to her about the prodigal, and she would say, "Well, you know, it's a son, and I'm daughter, and I don't really understand what you're talking about." So I remember just finding myself thinking, okay, well, I'll paint this for her and see if it helps her. So it was for her
Yes.
particularly, but then it,
Yes,
then it went to a
taken
wider
on.
audience, I guess.
Just that, I'm just intrigued, Charlie. So, take the prodigal son. When you
Yeah.
first painted that,
Yeah.
how does it work for you as an artist? I mean, do you kind of lock yourself away? What's the process? What's the journey to eventually get to that point where you've done it?
I think it began with seeing a friend of mine hugging his son. And I was having lunch with him, and I said, I said to them, can you just do that one more time? Can I just see you do that again?
Yes.
Because I think he'd done something wrong. And then there was a strange act, and then there was a moment of real kind of redemption
Yes.
at the lunch. And so I made them repeat it. And I just thought that symbolises so much. And even if you're not a Christian, whatever you believe, it symbolises something that is really beautiful. Forgiveness, redemption,
Sure.
reconciliation, whatever you like to call it. But it symbolised it for me. So I thought, I'd like to draw that. So I drew them. And then I painted it, and I made them pose to me again. And then I suddenly thought, well, as an image, what does, for me, the prodigal, as if you just saw it happening, you wouldn't know the story necessarily.
Yeah,
So I thought
sure.
I might summarise the story over the top of the painting.
Yes.
And I thought, well, what is the story really all about? And I actually looked into the story and realised that it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't about a bad boy who decides not to be bad anymore. I think I realised that our understanding of the story is so far from what Jesus is saying.
Yes.
The story to me is really how God sees us. And it's so different to how we think he sees us. And so it's about two different types of people. One who's trying to be happy by being bad, another trying to be happy by being good. And I think he's Jesus saying that there's more to life than morality and doing the right thing or the wrong thing. There has to be more than this, and it's about the Father. So It's all about this running Father. So that's why I wrote in the thing that I don't know why it's called the prodigal son. It should really be called the running Father, because the emphasis is on the nature of God.
Yes.
So really, it was an obsession with it that I just kind of wanted to explore, which is why I took it to bronze, because I thought, well, bronze is the next step because it's physical and you can feel it and people can put their hands on it, and and I think friends of mine who aren't Christians, they've seen. I mean, I had a guy who came around to do a survey on my house in Brixton, and he arrived pretty aggressively at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, came into the house and said, right, I'll start at the top, and he disappeared. I said, help yourself. And he came down 10 minutes later, and he changed colour in his face, and had tears in his eyes, and said, what are you doing in your house? And I thought he was commenting on how disgusting it was. So I said, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yes. Yes.
And he said, no, what are these paintings, especially that one with that father and son? I said, well, it's the prodigal son. And he said to me, said something like, he said, that's quite hardcore, isn't it? I can't remember how he put it, but he was I made him a cup of tea, and he said, listen, I've got a 9-year-old kid, and I've never hugged him. I don't know how to hug him. And because I thought he was going to start talking about God or something, but he related it immediately to his own son.
Yeah. Yes.
And then he just got up and he said, I'm going to go and find him. He left the house. And I was like, what about the survey?
Yes.
But that was it.
He was so moved.
There's something about that relationship, the Father, whether it's human or divine, that is so fundamental to our existence. And I think for me, if we can for a second a day or 5 seconds a day, I think, come to terms with it, or just dare to believe that we are loved that much by God, everything changes.
Yes.
No matter who you are, what you think you've done, or Jesus is really saying something so beautiful.
Yes.
Beyond morality and religion and anything. And that's why I think I've been obsessed with it, because I think it's the core of the gospel myself.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, then you did eventually discover church.
I did, bizarrely, yeah.
So where did you end up going, and how did you begin to become part of the wider church?
I went to a little tiny church in London, where I was 20 and everyone else was 65. which is
Yes.
fine, and I loved it.
Yes.
You know, I loved it, and I was their little mascot. But I didn't really have anyone that I could, you know, contemporaries that I could really talk to. But I thought that's what church was. I didn't think there were any.
Yeah.
I thought it was for old people before they died. It was their insurance policy. Oh, we're going to die, quick, let's go to church. So I didn't really, but I got commissioned to do a drawing by, I used to, when I was doing architecture, I got commissioned by a company to do a drawing of a building on the Brompton Road in London. And so it was very hot, and the traffic was intense. So I remember doing the drawing and then I saw a slip road. I walked up the slip road and to a church, and it was open. So I went and sat in it. And whoever was there was Phil the Verger was there. He's nice and he's friendly. And I saw the church had an office. I thought church don't have offices. Why do they have? They
Yes.
just have cloths and things, and fonts. They don't have offices. And I found myself going there on a Sunday evening, and there were about 500 people there, and there was a band. And I thought, oh no, this is just a cult. It's very dangerous, but it was quite fun to watch.
Yes.
And I didn't speak to a soul. I just observed it for a few weeks. And then I met someone, and then they invited me to tea. I was suspicious the tea had been drugged. You know, every single defence was there. I thought, you know, they'll want my money, they'll want this. It won't be. But you know, I was so suspicious, I think. And then Nicky Gumbel came up to me, and he had this incredible afro. This is in the 80s.
Yes.
And he was smiling and asked me to tea, so I went to tea with him and got to know him. And that's really how it began. It was his friendship was amazing. He was very accepting. And then I did cartoons for his little book, Why Jesus? And I found that I had a role in the church, and that even though I was odd and a bit prickly, that they accepted me.
Yes.
And bit by bit, church has become the most foundational part of my life.
Yes.
The community, the love, everything about it is imperfect, fantastically imperfect, but completely vital.
Yes.
If you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And the church you're talking about is called Holy Trinity Brompton.
It is. It's Holy Trinity Brompton. Although I go to a little one next to it now.
Yes.
But yeah, it is.
It is. But while you were there, Charlie, you obviously got the opportunity to do these cartoons for Alpha.
Yes.
You did the question mark.
I did that, man.
You did all those. So, and I think a lot of people obviously are very familiar with all those sorts of cartoons. I've noticed, and as you can see in our home, we've got a couple of your paintings. It seems that you go, you're gripped by something. So you went through a phase regarding angels.
I did, yeah.
So how did that come about?
The angels, I think, for me, were a way of... I have lots of people friends of mine who don't believe
Yes.
at anything at all. And, you know, people... And yet angels are appealing. I think a lot of Christianity to people is unattractive. They say, you know, it might be true, but it's unattractive. So, for whatever reason that may be. But I've tried to make the invisible attractive. So the unseen. So, you know, I'd say, you know, the angelic, is it seen or unseen? I don't know. And the Holy Spirit, you can't see him except in actions, perhaps, or in experience. But so I try to paint things. So the angel really, to me, represents the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And I did a series on the pianist and the angel.
Yes.
The pianist, for me, was just... I learnt the piano and struggled. Couldn't play the piano. Loved it. So, but it was always a fight. And so the piano, to me, represents just trying to live as well as you can, but not achieving very much. You know, you get the notes wrong, your keys are wrong, but you try. But the angel just, the presence of the angel with the hands on the shoulder or around is for me the grace of God really saying, you do your bit and I'll do mine.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the angelic was just really a way of me suggesting there was more to life than you think.
Yes.
Because I'm always thinking of people who don't believe as well as I am to the believer. I like painting for both.
Do you remember the time when you and I were in Rome?
Yes.
So we're in Rome, and we actually went to Rome because we decided we just wanted to go and just walk, think, pray in Rome. And we're having breakfast one morning, and I was really gripped by the story of the the Good Samaritan.
Yes,
I was
you
just
were.
the face. I was just gripped with it. I was just trying to understand it, trying to get my head round understanding it. And you just took out a piece of paper and you just drew it.
Yeah, I remember
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah,
Funny if seeing all these years, I've just started painting it now.
because that was years ago. We were in
Yeah,
Rome.
but that's how slow I am.
No, but obviously, even in that conversation, the creativity got released to at least create
Symbolise
an
it.
image.
Mhm.
And then obviously you've been marinating in that, and now you're beginning to.
There you go.
So are you working on something
I'm working
now?
on some paintings of the woman caught in adultery and, the Good Samaritan.
Oh. Now tell us about your big project that you're currently working on at St Paul's, Hammersmith. What is that?
That is what's called a triptych, which is a 3-part painting, a painting of 3 parts, trip as in try. And it's on the altar wall of a church in Hammersmith in London. And each panel, I think, is about 21 or 22 feet high. And I'm not sure how wide, but
Yeah.
they're enormous. It's an enormous thing I'm trying to do, and sometimes I get overwhelmed by it, feel out of my depth, feel incapable. And I think sometimes it's good for you to feel that you're out of your depth, because you then start to have to rely on God and not your own natural abilities. So it's the crucifixion in the middle. It's the prodigal son on the right. And on the left, I haven't started yet, is the baptism of Christ, where he's laughing. I haven't found any sort of shows. He's up to his waist in water with his head back, and his hands in the water. But it's just laughing. Because my mum, actually, I said to her, I'm doing this years ago, and she said, well, make sure it's joyous.
Yes.
Make sure it's joyous, So I thought, well, have we ever seen Jesus really laugh?
Your mum was so right, because baptisms are joyous
Well,
occasions.
they are. Next to it, bang next door, is one of the most tragic moments in the history of the cosmos, of the crucifixion. So it's sort of these two.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that panel is Jesus laughing, and
wow. Do you work on your own, obviously?
I do most of the time. 90%.
And would you be locked in the church by yourself?
By myself till late at night, up scaffolding with cups of tea. And it's been quite a journey, that, actually, particularly painting the crucifixion. For some reason I'm still on his wrists and hands, and have been for a while, and processing nails, skin, sinew, blood is a strange thing.
Yes.
On such a man.
Yes.
And it's brought all kinds of things up in me, good and bad. So yeah, it's been a journey, to say the least, doing that.
And it's not a sort of a project you can hurry. You just got to go with the...
I want to hurry it, because clearly it's taken, as I said, I'm slow at things, and I think they probably want it done. But in the same breath, processing how, it's the head of Christ is this
Absolutely.
big.
So Michelangelo couldn't really
Bless
hurry.
him. How did he do that?
How did he do that?
My heart goes out to the guy, seriously.
That must be also for you, though, getting a project done like that will give many, many people throughout many years the opportunity of
Well, I really hope so.
connecting.
I mean, I hope so. And I'm a figurative painter, because I like telling stories, and I like helping people understand things that I've tried to understand.
Sure.
So I like to involve people in a journey of understanding. And so, for instance, the crucifixion is next to the prodigal, and I think those two things are inextricably bound. The Father humiliating himself in self-sacrificial love is the cross. This kind of thing, they are enmeshed.
Yes.
And to show that relationship between, Christ bringing redemption, all these things, to have them together is a real chance,
Absolutely.
So it's a real privilege, I suppose. Sometimes, at my worst, to be truthful, curse it and am rude and don't want to be there, and spill my coffee on the scaffolding and burn my legs and slip and have accidents, and I'm at my worst, probably up there sometimes. Ironically, painting a crucifixion, but actually I think that's exactly where all our dirt has to go, which I've learned. I mean, if you are going to be foul, leave it at the cross, if you see what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So I've learned all of that, you know, people sort of say, gosh, you must feel very holy up there. I think, well, you know what, I don't actually. And I'm quite glad that I feel really human, because I think that's where it all begins.
Of course it is. I often say, Charlie, that, you know, we're all guilty, and it's what we do with the guilt, and
Exactly.
some of us we deny it, some of us deflect it
Yes,
on others,
that's
some
true.
of us drown it.
Yeah.
But if we want to get rid of it, we have to dissolve it in the blood of Jesus.
In the blood of Jesus.
That's the only thing.
It's the only place where it really is gone.
Absolutely.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it remains
No.
somewhere,
Yeah.
toxifying something
Yes.
else.
You're a very creative man, Charlie, and you're also a bit of an eccentric. And I gather with your...
I don't think I am. I mean,
A little bit. Come on, a little bit. So, tell us the story about you and your friend in a bath. Where was that? What was that all about?
I think where I've taken a
And
bath.
were you naked? And what were you raising money for? Go on, tell us that story.
Okay, a friend of mine lost his leg and half a leg, so 1.5 legs in South Africa, and he had no money. So I wanted to raise money for him. And one of my best friends is a guy called Bear, who's a climber. And this is
Bear Grylls.
yeah,
Yes.
but this is a long time ago. I mean, this is a good 10, 12 years ago.
Yes.
And we chatted, and I just said, you know, I said to him, I've always wanted to row up the Thames in a bathtub, and you know, he said, yeah, that sounds interesting. So basically, we got a bath, we put some stabilizers on it, and rowed from Twickenham right up to Greenwich in a bath naked.
And how long did that take?
It took 8 or 9 hours.
And was it fun?
It was one of the funniest days of my life, because, you know, just for comments, just what happened, people in bridges above.
People laughing.
Yeah, and it was on London Tonight, and they filmed it from above. So it was one of those days of making money to help someone, but also being ridiculous. And,
Yes.
and also going back to being Adam. I mean, we're all
Yeah,
naked, really, aren't we? We just pretend we're not.
Absolutely. And then, how is your friend now?
He's got special legs now,
Wonderful.
so he's good.
How do you see the future for yourself, Charlie?
I have absolutely no idea. I think for me, every day is a gift. I'm never quite sure when it's going to end. So I think.
But I love that. Every day's a gift.
It is. Yeah, you have to see
Every day's
that.
a gift.
Friend of
Do
mine.
you have aspirations though for the next season of your life, or?
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to carry on painting. I'd like to be married. I'd like to. I'd like to see what God has for me in terms of making images, and
Yes.
I don't know really. I have a sort of scarily blank sheet. I'm not a great planner of anything. Maybe that's a real weakness. Probably is. Everyone says, "What are your plans? You need plans." I don't essentially have them. I just think today has enough cares of its own, and I will live today, and tomorrow, let's see. I don't know.
No.
You just have to pray your way, don't you? Really.
Yeah. Charlie, it is an absolute delight. Always a delight to talk to you.
Thank you. That's lovely to talk to you.